So the importance of the brand story. How important is it to have a story if you want to be a brand? How imperative is that, I guess, narrative of your journey? How imperative is it to the audience you're trying to sell to in order for them to convert? And I will just say for the record that if you're somebody who is an eBay seller, happy to be faceless, is consistent and content with not being the face of any type of brand, then live your movie, do your thing. I don't think that the brand story is for everyone. And also, it's not about forcing something that doesn't actually mean anything to you, because then we go down this route of creating, I don't know, like inconsistencies with the narrative we're setting out. So I guess I'll just tell you what my brand story is, and then I'll kind of break down a few of the important factors of it. So if I was to look at my brand story, if someone was to say, what is the brand story of Gully? Now, I think that certain aspects that come together with businesses in terms of a story is a lot of brands will have what's called like a mission statement, and it's essentially what the brand intends to do, what the purpose of the brand is, so that you can understand if that brand is for you. So a brand example of someone who has a great mission statement that you could read is F as in Frank and Frankie Collective. They're a Canadian vintage and secondhand brand, and they just have they've got a great way of representing their brand story and their mission statement online. But I'll explain a little bit more as in an example of like what my brand story is, and then kind of just talk about, I guess, some factors to consider with how important it really is. So if someone was to say to me, so what's the brand story for you? I mean, for the most part, I've been a pretty introverted kind of guy. I've lived pretty much like in bedrooms, whether it was making YouTube videos or uploading products on the internet. So I'm one of those people that's pretty resilient. I don't give up on things, but I've got, again, a very obsessive personality, which is why everything I do, I have to just do to like the excess. So with a clothing brand, especially in secondhand, that's almost like where my obsessive nature came to a good use, or it came to show how it could be used. So I'm born out of the East Midlands. The brand was born out of, I guess, having a wandering eye while studying at university. And what I mean by that is, I don't think I was very set on the academia, or that side of just like sitting down and learning something. So while I was at university and before, I used to just go to charity shops. I mean, flipping heck, I wouldn't really want to promote this, but when I was at uni, I was constantly like missing lectures to go and do shoots with models, and I was essentially just super focused on what it is I was doing, and I was adamant that this was where I was going. It was like I'm very all or nothing. But Spen, the brand story, can you just remind us? So I'm this 18-year-old at the time, out of the East Midlands, studying at De Montfort University, trying to find a bit more of piece of purpose with what it is that I'm doing. I'm not connecting with my degree. It's useful, like the skills I'm learning. Again, though, not to toot my own horn, but I went and studied like editing and stuff. But from the age of 14, I was running a YouTube channel, and I'd edited the best part of like 500 videos. Again, very, very obsessive sort of person, and sort of quite introverted in that sense as well. Not all introverted, but relatively introverted. So to get to this point of how the brand story started, I started out of a bedroom, and I started out of a like need to find some other purpose in my life. I found that purpose, and I ran with that. And then literally before graduating from university, the year before, I'd employed my best friend at the time, and I literally finished the degree, and I went straight into this brand, like head first, cannonballed into running a complete company. I had a small unit that was like £500 a month behind my parents' house that was just by a disused old railway, and within 18 months of that journey, I then went and got a new premises that was this one. And I got this in 2015. So I went from a small little bedroom room to a small little box room that I was paying for, to then, 2,500 square meters of space, a warehouse, an old mill. So kind of like looking at the brand story, I guess the brand story is how I started from nothing and how it actually came about. So mine was, like little things, I guess, that add to the quirks of the story. It's like my first and my only thing I used to use for my student loans was I bought my first computer that I listed my products on, and I just used to use it to go and buy and sell clothing because I lived at home, was still allocated this money, and I was thinking, I'm going to use it for something. I'm going to start a business. I'm not going to go out and, look, just because I was a bit of an introvert, I still lived a life. I did go out and enjoy myself and partied and did all that sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say no to it now. But at the time, I was just focused on what was the best way of spending the money that I was getting. Again, I didn't have a job. This was just like what I did. But when I think about the brand story, I kind of look at a few different ways of mine. So there was the brand story that kind of follows me, or as people call it, like the hero complex, which I think it might be inaccurate, but it's like that kind of, I started with nothing. I was just this guy at home, and then I got this big place, and I was important, and I was like required, and I had purpose and all this rubbish. Whatever you want to look at it, there was a few brand stories that you can pull from it. And the first one was this boy from Leicester that's come out of nowhere, starting a brand, and is bigger than all the London brands on these platforms like ASOS. Then the brand story is the guy that employed his mum that was working at a job she didn't like. And she was a substitute teacher in an industry that, without getting too political, the schooling system at the time, and probably still is now, was very underfunded, very under-resourced, and there was a lot of friction between the people in the hierarchical system that worked in it. And I think that for her, she wanted a way out, and I was fortunate enough to give her a way out. And ever since 2015, she's been here working with me. So when we kind of look at the brand story, the main thing is all of this ends up being some sort of underplayed narrative that you end up telling to your audience or to the customers. One big factor that I sort of ran towards the end of Gully was I was putting an impression on the family element, because to me that was still, out of everything, one of the biggest brand things that I can focus on to this day is still that I got to employ my mum. I got to help her out of a situation that she wasn't happy with, and we got to create something beautiful with loads of other people who were at the time great people for what we were doing. And at that time in the moment, for business, it was probably less with longevity because I employed people out of like friendships and stuff. But in terms of that short-lived space of time, I got to build a brand with the people I loved at the time. And I don't think that is a matched feeling, other than obviously consistently having those friendships with people, consistently having the brand. I don't sit there and feel sad about anything like that. But what I do want to do is come back to the importance of the brand story. And I'm going to talk about it again while I don't bag these up, because I'll just get distracted. But the thing with the brand story, right, is it's the narrative you tell yourself, the narrative of how you have experienced the way that you've got to that point, but also a brand story allows people to make that very quick, instant decision whether you are that sort of person for them based on the experience you are conveying to the world. So one aspect of me with a family business attracted a lot more middle-aged people and a lot of different sort of ages and audiences to be encouraged by it, because there was an element of family, an element of unity, an element of like, oh, these are real people and this is actually a mum and son and there's loads of other people and it's quite like, it's family orientated. Like, that's something I would like to support. And, whether we look at anything, I mean, not to go too BTEC economics, so excuse me, but when you go and buy a meal deal from Tesco, you're making an investment to Tesco via buying a meal deal. And maybe at that point you don't ever question what Tesco's brand story is. Probably don't give a shit because it's Tesco and it's a massive brand. You just, certain things, certain things are there for the convenience. Tesco's there for the convenience, and things like this are luxury preferences. To buy clothes is an essential to some degree, but it's also a luxury preference. Some people will go, well, if I've bought clothes for the last 15 years, do I really need to buy any new clothes, or can I just keep wearing the same ones? But when we come down to the importance of the brand story, if you're somebody who wants to set up a clothing brand, a book selling brand, whatever type of brand, there's an underlying point of you that might want to have a brand story, or maybe just understand what got you here to where you are today from where you began, and sort of take the steps back to understand that journey, and maybe find key points within it that create a brand story. Because some people might be like, I started from a bedroom, didn't like my job, and then I've just started a brand from here and now I've got a little space. That's a brand story. You've just got to, I guess, glamorize it a bit or make it sound a little bit more exciting. I don't know. It depends, because exciting is, again, a pretty subjective feeling, and it's not that everybody wants to feel like that when they see your brand. There's just so many things, but the importance of a brand story is what we want to do in 2024 if we've got brands, is we want to connect with people, because people buy into people. And if you've got, the same way we've got this YouTube, okay? Look, I'm trying to use this as a completely unfiltered way. There'll be times when I tell you little top tips, give away value in certain aspects, or maybe just open up my mind based on somebody who's been in this industry for so long and is trying to not come with a skeptical view based on the outcome that I sit in now. So just because I'm not actually where I was before, I don't want it to appear and to come from any residual negative place, if that makes sense. I want this to be transparent to a completely unbiased experience by the topics. Hey, Spen, that was a lot of yapping there. Sorry, mate. Little dance as well. But no, the importance of the brand story, it is super key just to connect with people. I think that connection is super key, and I think that if you're somebody who actually is thinking of setting up a brand, is running a brand, then just be mindful of the story you want to tell and don't do anything too unauthentic. So the three things that I ask myself now, even with this YouTube video, this is just a little side thing and I'll leave it here. The three questions I always ask myself with these videos and with most points in life now is purpose, authenticity, and enjoyment. So the first one is, does this video give me purpose? Is this giving you guys purpose? Is there something from this that can like have some sort of purpose, whether it's for me, for you, hopefully for both? The second one, am I being authentically me? Am I being authentic? Is the information I'm orchestrating, is that authentic? And is this an authentic version of me? And the third one is, am I actually enjoying making the content? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? And as a result, are you guys hopefully enjoying what you're seeing? And by those like three questioning points, I keep myself aware of where I'm at. So a little bit different to the brand story point, I suppose. But the importance of the brand story is, it's just, for me personally, I would say it's about connection. It's about building a connection with somebody. And remember the law of, I'd rather have 100 people buy 10 times a year than 1,000 people buy once a year, because I would much rather have a small little like fleet of a community of 100 people that I consistently engaged with and kept going for like next year and next year and next year, rather than 1,000 people this year and 1,000 people new next year, because I'm not actually connecting with anybody. That's what I feel personally. You might disagree, and feel free to share your opinions and thoughts. And yeah, interesting one. Good one to start the week off this.